The scarecrow strode away, leaving the shelf and the books where they fell. Puck fired insults at him as the librarian walked away. I know Oz, he's a liar. I wouldn't be surprised if your brain wasn't made out of an old sock and some butterscotch pudding. I'm talking to you, Mr. Genius. You should call Oz and get a receipt for your brain. I'm sure the warranty has expired. We tried to warn you, Daphne said as she picked up a travel guide to Camelot and put it back on the shelf. We tried to warn you, Puck mocked as he scratched furiously. Oh, I can smell the books on my skin. Though Puck refused, Sabrina and Daphne decided to help the scarecrow with the mess he made. After an hour, they were regretting their decision. Books are heavy, Daphne grumbled as she reshelved a series of increasingly thick novels about a boy who went to a school for wizards. I know, can't they write these things smaller? Sabrina said. Excuse me, a voice said from behind them. Sabrina hadn't heard anyone approach and nearly screamed when she turned around. Standing before her was the strangest looking man she had ever seen. He wore an expensive-looking white suit, and his fingers were adorned with silver and ruby rings. On his wrist was a diamond-studded watch, and his ears were small silver hoop earrings. But what really made him stand out was his hair. His long, curly beard and bushy eyebrows were a natural shade of blue. Do you work here? He asked. Sabrina shook her head, speechless. No, we're just helping out the librarian, Daphne said. The little girl stammered a bit, obviously disturbed by the man as well. The man with the blue hair frowned and looked about. That fool will be no help. I don't suppose you can point me to the law books. Sabrina shrugged. Sorry, I'll find them myself. The man huffed and walked farther into the library. Sabrina looked after him. There was something troubling about this stranger. She felt as if there was evil rather than blood pumping through his veins. His hair and glaring eyes seemed inhuman, like he was a devil made flesh. Do you know who that was? That's Bluebeard, Puck said, as he pulled the girls behind a shelf. He's got to be the most villainous ever after in this town. I thought you were the most villainous ever after in this town, Sabrina said. Besides me, Puck said as he peered around the corner. He's a recluse. I hear he has a mansion up on Mount Taurus, but no one has seen him in years. I heard Charming told him to stay off town. I guess now that there's a new mayor, he's doing what he wants. So what? Who's Bluebeard? Sabrina asked impatiently. Puck wrapped his hand around her mouth. Shh, he whispered, then turned back to watch the man. Bluebeard is famous for being married almost 50 times, and each of his wives had a nasty habit of losing her head. You mean he drove them crazy? Daphne asked. No, I mean he chopped their heads off with an axe. Duh, Puck snapped. Gross, Daphne said, peering over the corner to get a better look at the man. That's only half of it, Puck said. He stored his wives' bodies in a secret room in his home. He used the room to test his new wives. He forbade them from entering it, and if curiosity got the best of them, he added them to his collection. If he's so evil, why are we standing here watching him? Sabrina said. Because I'm trying to get up the courage to go over and ask him for an autograph, Puck said. Sabrina watched Bluebeard study a shelf holding several leather-bound books. He took a few large volumes off the shelf and put them on a nearby table. When he had a big pile, he sat and started flipping through them and taking notes. What do you think he's doing here? Daphne asked. No one knew, and it was clear that they shouldn't stick around to find out. The man made Sabrina nervous. Even from across the library, she could feel the darkness inside him. It felt hot and angry. Unfortunately, before they could leave, they were stopped in their tracks by a familiar face. Snow White had several books in her hands, and she sat them down at an empty table near where Bluebeard was studying. Snow White was stunning, with creamy white skin, coal black hair, and twinkling blue eyes. Her beauty was so profound it seemed unnatural, as if she didn't belong to the human race. Shall we say hi? Daphne whispered. Snow White had been a good family friend, but none of the Grimms had heard a peep from her in more than a month. She was very angry with Granny Rhoda, so angry that their friendship was in ruins. Granny had let Snow's former fiancé, Prince Charming, sleep on the family couch when everyone thought he was missing and maybe dead. Snow, heartbroken with fear and worry, felt betrayed when she discovered he was safe and sound and hiding in her best friend's home. Sabrina couldn't blame Miss White. Charming should have told her where he was, but he claimed Snow's life was in danger. He wanted to save her without her knowing it, but his plan blew up in everyone's face when Snow dropped by unexpectedly and discovered him alive and well. Unfortunately, the beauty's arrival at the library was noticed by Bluebeard as well. Snow White's presence tore his attention away from his books. He seemed hypnotized by her. He studied her the way an art collector looks at a rare painting. His gaze didn't fall on her so much as it seemed to reach out for her, coaxing her to come closer. Sabrina was reminded of a film she had seen in school about spiders catching flies in their webs then eating them from the inside out. Snow White, Bluebeard said, standing up from his table. Snow turned to face him, her ever-present smile lighting up the room. When she saw him, her grin faded. Oh, hello, Mr. Bluebeard. Snow, I haven't seen you in years. You're looking wonderful, Bluebeard said as his eyes darted over her body. Thank you, the teacher muttered. Sabrina could tell Miss White was nervous. The beauty dropped one of the books she was holding. Bluebeard swooped down and retrieved it, but he didn't hand it back, ignoring Snow's outstretched hand. It's such a small town, but I never run into you like this, Bluebeard continued. Well, I keep quite busy. Oh, it's good to be busy. Keeps mind from wandering, the man said. You know what they say. Idle hands on the devil's playground. Sabrina watched Snow force a smile onto her face and nodded. We really don't get to see enough of each other, Bluebeard continued. Perhaps I can persuade you to accompany me to dinner. I love to catch up, as they say. Miss White squirmed. I'm afraid I'm very busy. Bluebeard's eyes flashed with anger. You're saying no to me? Snow stood up, knocking her books to the ground, but Bluebeard shoved her back into her chair. I'm trying to be nice, Miss White, he hissed. We have to stop this, Daphne declared. What do you want to do? Sabrina asked. Daphne was about to march up to them and interrupt when Puck grabbed her by the back of the collar. He murmured, Listen, this isn't a guy you play around with. If you go over there and get into his business, he'll turn his anger on you. She needs our help, Daphne said. Sabrina glanced around, looking for something that might distract Bluebeard. All she saw were books and rows of shelves. They couldn't exactly stop tossing books at a man who cut people's heads off. Then she spotted the Scarecrow. He was at the top of a bookcase, halfway across the room, and as before, the case was teetering back and forth. Sabrina got an idea. Help me push this bookcase over, Sabrina said. She pushed on the frame, and it leaned a little. With Daphne and Puck helping, it was soon rocking back and forth. With all the books weighing it down, the bookcase seemed like it might fall back and collapse on them. I think we need a little something extra, Sabrina said to Puck. The boy grinned, spun around his heels, and in a flash, he morphed into a bull with long white horns. He huffed and stomped his feet. We should get out of his way, Sabrina said, pulling her sister aside. With a bellow and a grunt, Puck ran forward, head first, knocking the bookcase hard. It toppled over, crashing into another bookcase right next to it, and causing that one to fall over too. That bookcase fell onto the bookcase beside it, starting a chain reaction through the library like dominoes. Books and magazines flew into the air, as did the Scarecrow, who was buried beneath them. Oops, Sabrina said, as she, Puck, and Daphne dashed toward the doors. Snow was right in front of them, hurrying to the parking lot. Once outside, They found Miss White leaning against her car and breathing hard. She was obviously unnerved by her encounter with Bluebeard and was doing her best to calm herself. "Are you okay, Miss White?" Daphne asked. "Daphne?" Snow replied. "Yes, I just ran to." "Well, we know," Sabrina said. "Bluebeard." "Yes," Snow said. "He's always had a thing for me, but I..." "Wait a minute. Are the three of you responsible for all that chaos?" Puck nodded and bowed. "At your service." "Why haven't you returned any of Granny Rolla's calls?" Daphne asked. "She wants to apologize." "Daphne, when you grow up, you'll find that being an adult is complicated. It's not as easy as picking up the phone and saying hi." "First of all, I am grown up," Daphne said. "Second, you don't understand. Granny feels terrible about what's happened. Mr. Charming begged us to keep it a secret. He said he was doing it for your own good." "How is pretending to be dead supposed to be for my own good?" Snow asked. Sabrina and Daphne shared a knowing glance. "I wish we could tell you, but he's sworn us to secrecy," Sabrina said. "See, that's the problem," Miss White said. "Everyone is keeping secrets from me, and they tell me that it's for my own good. We're trying to protect you," Daphne said. Snow White groaned. "Everyone wants to protect Snow White." "Well, I'm not a little girl, Daphne. I was fighting my own battles before Billy Charming came along." There was a long, uncomfortable silence until Snow spoke again. "The three of you should get home. Rolla's probably worried sick about you." Then she turned, got into her car, and drove away. Uncle Jake was thrilled with the information they had gathered at the library, but when Daphne offered to write a letter to Goldilocks, Jake shook his head. He claimed he had made a call to some old friends and they were sending something that would work a lot better than a stamp and an envelope. In fact, he promised that such would soon be over. When the girls and Puck headed off to bed, Jake was still staring at Goldilocks through the mirror. She was in a boat riding on a canal. A man with a long pole steered her along as she glanced up at the moon. The next morning, Sabrina woke to loud shouting and pounding. She rubbed her eyes and looked around, not surprised to find that Daphne was still sound asleep. She climbed out of bed, slipped on a rope she had hanging from her bedpost, and stomped down the stairs. By the front door, poking his head out of the umbrella stand, she found a creature that looked like it was part dwarf, part crocodile. He gestured to the door. "There's a man out there," the creature hissed. "He could be dangerous." He held a walkie-talkie to his face and cried, "Where's my backup?" Sabrina looked through the window and saw Robin Hood pounding on the door. "That's Robin Hood. We know him," Sabrina explained. "Cancel that backup, people," the creature shouted into his walkie-talkie. "We are back to Code Yellow. All clear, I repeat, we are at Code Yellow." Then he stuck his head back into the stand and disappeared. Sabrina quickly straightened her hair, tightened her bathrobe, and checked herself in the hall mirror. She could just die letting the handsome lawyer see her in her goofy pajamas, like with a serious case of bad head, but she seemed to be the only one awake, and he kept shouting that there was an emergency. Finally, when she realized nothing would make her look better short of a shower, she opened the door. "You're not dressed, kid! You've got to get dressed!" the lawyer exclaimed as he barged through the open doorway. "Where is everyone?" Sabrina was horrified to be called a kid. "In bed? It's not even 8 in the morning," she said, awkwardly pushing her hand behind her ear. "Well, wake them up. We have to get over to the courthouse now," Robin cried. "The trial started today." "What trial?" "The trial of the big bad wolf," he said. Chapter 4. Little John sent over a demand for a trial last night, Robin Hood said as he hurried the family up the steps of the ferryboat landing. That seems to be the end of this video. I'll see you later. Goodbye.